This is Josh here from Inside Wrestling Truth, and today's guest is Cash Flo. Cash, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Josh?
Really good, really good. Tell us where you're from and who trains you.
Where am I from professionally? Or where do I come from? Where did I come up? Where did I grow
Where
up?
did you grow up?
I grew up South Louisville. Been in South Louisville my whole life. I moved out of South Louisville for about a year, but other than that, it's my home, man.
Right.
My home.
And who trained you?
It's kind of a loose question, okay? We talk, a lot of people talk about people that train you, people that have worked with you, people that have done this. I was trained in the House of Hardcore, IWA Mid South, circa 1995, 1996. Ian Rotten was there, of course. That's his show.
Yeah.
There are various guys that come through to help out. Most notable, the Bull Payne, Tracy Smothers. I learned a lot from those guys coming in and out of that locker room, man.
Right.
You kind of it kind of grows legs on its own. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. What made you want to get into the wrestling business?
Same as everybody, man. I've been a wrestling fan my whole life,
Yeah.
and that ain't gonna change. To this day, I'm still a wrestling fan. I'm a different kind of wrestling fan,
Yeah.
but I'm still a wrestling fan.
What guys did you follow when you were growing up?
What guys did I follow? I'm a Mid South guy.
Yeah.
Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee, the Dirty Dutchman, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, uh, you know, Doug Gilbert, young Jeff Jarrett. I have some stories about Hickerson. I remember watching him on TV. And then of course the guys that had gradually come up when Mid South wrestling was real prevalent on TV and stuff. Some of those young Mark Callaways and Sids and
Yeah.
Pat Tanakas and guys like that, guys that are workers.
Yeah.
That'll really hook you. So
What's been your best and worst company to work for?
well, I'm gonna tell you because I'm having the time of my life right now. This is the most fun in professional wrestling that I've ever had. So I'm gonna have to say Southern Wrestling Entertainment, not just because I'm a big part of this, but because I feel like in my limited wisdom that things are done the way it should be done.
Yeah.
And the worst place that I ever worked for, the worst show that I ever worked for, or the worst fed. Because I've worked some good feds that I thought, but there have been the single worst. Working on a dirt floor in front of 20 people in a barn with horse shit smell in the background. You know, the worst fed that I ever
Yeah.
worked for, man. I worked in a barn when I moved back from Seattle. I worked in a barn over, I think, in Corden, Indiana. It was a fan that put something together, and I think his front row was a couple couches, and
Wow.
it was a homemade ring that they had built out of plywood, and I did that because you know a guy in the wrestling business that I knew really well, said just come on over, they'll pay you, they know you. It's just one of them things, but it was SHW, I think's what it was. And I'm not bad. Guys trying. My
Yeah.
advice to him would be, do it right if you're going to do it. Try not to take the business too much. But yeah, I think it was like strictly hardcore wrestling or something,
Yeah.
something crazy like that. I don't know. I can't remember. But
What's been your worst injury?
my worst injury. I was in Lexington, Kentucky. It was for IWA Mid South. Um, I got two of them. I'm gonna give you this one because it, um, the looks that some of the guys gave me when it happened, was pretty eye opening. I was wrestling a guy named Chip Fairway, and you know we were, we were playing chair games, and it was a good run. Chip was always a good worker, you know. He rest in peace. Well, he took a steel chair, he stuck it on the floor, and instead of turning it flat side, you know, that way I could maybe take a flat bump, it was turned the other way where the lips were up. Well, I took a DDT from him, you know. Chip was very heavy handed, you know, I don't blame him one bit. You know, of course I could have protected myself a little better. Well, I got stuck. It peeled my cap, you know, something like 40 staples and 20 stitches in my fod. And there's another one. I was on tour with the Juggalos. Um, I was real sweaty. You know, I wrestled, you know, without no shirt and, you know, trunks or whatever. And I was wrestling Madman Pondo. And, you know, the whole deal, the spot was we were going to go up on this stage and, you know, I was going to take this mean bump off the stage. Pondo was going to powerbomb me through a table. Well, you know, I was a little bigger. You know, I'm not questioning Pondo's strength, but I was a little bigger. Well, you know, as we worked and worked and worked, I got real sweaty. And I couldn't sit up. He couldn't get me up. I slid through his arms and I dove straight down off. It was about a 10, 12-foot stage. Missed the table, landed on the back of my head and my neck, and I popped my face with my knees, and it did something to my back. I couldn't walk. You know, I had to. There's a big old funny story that Pondo would tell about what happened to me afterwards, but I couldn't walk. You know, I had to get some major massaging done. You know, and it kind of put me out of the tour. You know, for a little while. It was bad. I never felt that, and I've done a lot of things with my back. You know, I've done some massive major leg drops off crazy heights and distances, and you know, just something about then. You know, the way I twisted when I landed. You know, it hurt me pretty bad.
What guys do you respect the most in the business?
Any particular guys, you know, I respect guys that garner respect. Okay, I don't believe in any heat is good heat. I respect guys that do things in a positive way. Okay, the core group that we have working here at Southern Wrestling Entertainment, I highly respect. Some a little more experienced than others. I respect them nonetheless because they choose to be positive and they choose to do things right. Uh, I can't give you any particular names of people that I respect or that I don't respect, and it's not for me for any kind of repercussion because I don't give a damn. I mean, I really don't. You know, if somebody got a problem with me, they can come holler.
Right.
It's just that you know, wrestling is what you make it, and if you make, you know, if you surround yourself with negativity and that's what you bring to the table in professional wrestling, then, you know, at least you went for yours. You know, that garners some type of respect, whether I agree with it or not. But, you know, what I do respect in wrestling is positivity, creativity, and you know, doing things that I feel is right in my limited wisdom.
Do you enjoy being a heel or a face better, and why?
I enjoy both, man. I enjoy reactions. You know what? There is nothing like going out into a crowd of 50 people, crowd of 5,000 people, and I've done that. You know, I wrestled in front of those juggalos at those gatherings, dude, and it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I I live for those reactions. You know, there's nothing like going out in front of however many people, and as soon as you hit the curtain, a garbage can comes flying at your head, or a cup of Mountain Dew or piss,
Or anything, yeah.
you know, quarters, and at the same time, there's nothing like walking through a curtain, and as soon as you pull the curtain back, it erupts. You know, with adoration and cheers. I mean, the goosebumps are the same. The why and wherefore, it matters little to me. And I would go into any fed and be the biggest baby face or the biggest heel that they wanted me to. Their choice. They asked me for a preference. Hey man, this is your fed. Where do I fit in? You know what I mean?
What's been your bloodiest match?
Man. blood. 3-way three-way dance, necro butchery and rotting. I've had some. I had a really. There was an IWA Mid South back in the early 2000s. There was uh, a CZW IWA kind of a clash kind of deal, and I was slated to work a Nick Mondo. That was pretty heated. I was hyped up for it. I was stiff. He was stiff. We rolled around a lot of glass, a lot of tacks. Um, you know, in my opinion, you asked me about the bloodiest match. In my opinion, all matches that are bloody are extremely bloody. I never got. Yeah, I had a lot of cuts and stuff on the back, but man, once you're cut, you're cut. You know, I told you about the injury. And it wasn't really an injury per se as a big gash.
Yeah.
That I could argue that was probably my bloodiest because I had a big old hole in my head. Like I said, my cap was peeled.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and it's just one of the things. Blood's blood to me.
What was it like working with Punk and Hero?
Strenuous. Chris Hero is, and I believe him to be this day. It's been a long time since I've been in the ring with him, but he was very leveled out. I mean, that means he knew what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. Punk was, he was the exact opposite of me at that time. He didn't want to go out. He didn't want to live the wrestling life. He was all about wrestling, which was no surprise to me that he got to where he got. Me, I was all about living the life. I was all about, wrestling is what you make it. And I was out to have a good time. I was out to make some friends, have a good time. And that's what I did. And I believe, at that time, Punk kind of looked down on some of us, He really liked working. He was very professional in the ring, There was never no question of whether or not Punk was going to shoot on you or, try to make you look bad, Whatever storylines CM Punk was told to do, he did them regardless. Whether it was putting me over, whether it was me putting him over, we had no issue. There was no clash in the ring. So, of course, I didn't see any over the top, anything special about him at that time. But, I say that, then again, you have to understand what wrestling really is, and he really was a wrestler to the fullest extent,
Yeah.
He was a worker, so.
What were some of your favorite moments or matches when you worked in the IWA?
I'm a contact man. I like snug wrestling, give it to me. I enjoyed all my time, of course, with Lenny Montgomery, rolling hard. There's not a day that I, don't think about that guy because while he was fighting for his life, my daughter was fighting for her life being born. I enjoyed all that stuff, the matches per se. I enjoyed the three-way dance with Ian Rotten and Chris Hero. That was very fun. It allowed me to start to be able to do what I wanted to do. Of course, I enjoyed sharing the locker room with, a who's who of wrestling back then. Even now, with Smothers, Tommy Rich, I got to meet, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Sherry Martel, Doll Baby. That was the experience in the IWA locker room for me. For whatever reason, I wasn't, one of the guys that was one of those pedestal guys. I was a guy, probably the only guy in that wrestling school that actually come all the way through the wrestling school to work for him. I wasn't really a pedestal guy, but just the experience. I don't want to say, any matches per se, but just the experience of being in an IWA locker room was good. So,
what title that you held has meant the most to you?
What title have I You know, I at this stage in the game, I truly understand what those titles are. Uh, when it happened, you know, I was really broken up when IWA Mid South title, you know, come around my waist. I felt like I earned it. I went through a lot of shit to fucking get it.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, hindsight's 2020. You know, we all know what titles are in wrestling. I'm not trying to kick the business or whatever, but we all know. Okay, you know, it's a way. So yeah, to me, it's all about the experience. You know, it's all about the experience.
How did your name Cash Flow come about?
Me and Rolling Hard, me and Lenny Montgomery, we were on our way to Shakey's. Um, you know, it didn't take me long going through wrestling school to pick up wrestling. And you know, Roland always used to tell me, "Hey, Cash." Well, he didn't say Cash. He'd say Mike. Damn, Mike, you're on the money. You know, he would get in and work out. Hey, you're on the money. You know, and at that time, you know, I was a little more. I was all about, you know, the kid life. I was all about smoking weed and doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, it was all about cash flow. It was all about money. You know, it was all because you know I was selling weed.
Yeah.
You know, I was immersed in that
Right.
game also with
Right.
wrestling. And you know, I was like, Roland, what do you think? Cash flow? He said, man, I love it. And that's where it got. That's where it's at.
What do you think is the biggest problem in the indies right now?
Too many of
I mean,
them. You know, I'm not going to be real popular with this, but I am an advocate in every state of professional wrestling being regulated by an athletic commission.
mm-hmm.
You know, I believe that professional wrestlers are special. I believe it should be regulated. I believe somebody that has no business being in professional wrestling really should not be in professional wrestling, whether it be physically or mentally. Okay, I believe that because of the dangers in wrestling, that guys should be drug tested. Um, the biggest, yeah, just too many of them. The biggest problem in the indies today, and 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 it takes me back to something that I heard not just an hour and a half ago. Mr. Jerry Jarrett said, uh, "Too many carbon copies of one another and not enough personality," and I see that everywhere I go.
How did the SWE come about, and what roles do you play in that company?
Southern Wrestling Entertainment came about. A man named Perry Gibson wanted to run a wrestling fed, and you know, this guy has a retail mind. He's very intelligent, and he he went out and got his promoter's license. He knows a couple of us guys that have been in the business quite a while,
Yeah.
and he wanted to do something right. Well, I was immersed in helping out another Fed, Miss Delphia Rickendollar, All Pro Wrestling. I was immersed in helping that Fed, and Dean was working for me at that time, soaking up knowledge. I mean, the dude is like a sponge. And when, you know, the drama in professional wrestling happens, yada, 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 whatever, um, he approached me, and SWE had actually ran their first show right before the abrupt end of All Pro Wrestling. And of course, you know, he's my friend, and I worked for him, and he was going to keep his stuff going. So, you know, he and I sit down and talk. You know, well, why don't we find ourselves a building and try and run a wrestling school to try and bring some of these young guys that want to break in the business, try to bring them in
Yeah.
and give them the Fed to work at. And it kind of blossomed from there. You know, I did a lot of the legwork, finding the building. Dean and I would chit chat and go back and forth about it, and it was decided that on a business standpoint, that Dino and I, Perry, are partners. Uh, the wrestling fed is his. He is the promoter. He is the boss of this wrestling fed. But the overall business, he and I are partners. My role is part of the booking committee, and I train the young guys. I bring the young guys up. Try to teach them in my limited wisdom the best that I possibly can. And I'm here. Creatively, we have a booking committee, and the decisions are made because 2 minds are better than 1 and 4 minds are better than 2, and I firmly believe a successful wrestling company takes more than 1 or 2 people, and Perry and I are both on the same page when it comes to that. So,
Who's one guy from the Indies you want to work with that you haven't?
that I haven't worked. One of the guys, I AJ Styles is a super indie. I would love to get in the ring and try to showcase with that guy. Some of those, a lot of the guys on the indies that I would love to work are guys that traditionally people would look at me and say, you can't do it. But I've been dealing with that stereotype my whole career. And people tend to be a little surprised about what I can or cannot do, in a wrestling ring. Ian Rotten was surprised at what I could or could not do in a wrestling ring. So, AJ Styles would be one of them. I would love to get back in the ring, even though, you said somebody I haven't been in. I would love to get back in the ring with Chris Hero again. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I would consider Chris a friend. He watched me do a lot of crazy stuff, on tours with the Juggalos and stuff. Maybe Steen. I've heard a lot about Kevin Steen and some of those guys. Uha Nation, maybe. I've heard a lot about those guys. I think that would be I think it would be interesting.
Yeah. What legends have you worked with?
Woo. Tommy Rich, Dutch Mantel. Oh boy, legends. Tommy Rich, Dutch Mantel, Sherry Martel, George Animal Steel, Honky.
That's enough.
I mean, my favorite, I would really love to tell you my favorite because I really love to put this guy over, man. Dutch Mantel. That dude is one of the smartest dudes that I've ever talked to, ever known, ever seen. And, it's a treat just being around that guy, Dutch Mantel, it's got to be my favorite.
Who's the stiffest guy you've ever worked with?
The stiffest guy I ever worked with? That's kind of relative. That's kind of relative. Coming up, the first part of my tenure in wrestling, because it changes as you go on. I mean, the first part of my tenure in wrestling, the stiffest guy I ever worked with, Bull Payne. My very first wrestling match was against a guy named Tom Burton, Dirty White Boy, Tom Burton, and he stretched the fuck out of me. He stretched me so bad that I couldn't make it to the finish. I tapped out to a single leg Boston Crab shoot. He was a shooter. He was known for a shooter. And, I was doing, I did the whole deal where I did the security guard and all that stuff. And, that guy was stiff for that time. Of course, I probably wouldn't consider that stiff these days. I probably would still consider Bull Payne stiff just because it's Bull. It's probably Bull. Bull was always the tightest. He was always, and I call it tight and snug. I don't call it stiff.
Yeah.
You know, because there are times you're out there in them small venues, man, you got to be tight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if these people don't believe it, then why are you even there?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do you have a favorite road story?
So, well, I got a story that you know that I tell in my limited wisdom that I tell, you know, and people tend to get a kick out of it. It was my first show at St. Andrew's Hall in Detroit for the Clowns, and you know I was with Too Tough Tony and Corporal Robinson. Of course, you know Man Pondo was there, and you know a lot of the other guys. The Clowns was there, and Ricky and Robert, Rock and Roll Express was there. And, you know we were having a good old time. You know we were blazing it up. You know, and I did this little battle royal deal. You know they there were so many people there. They even broke down St. Andrew's Hall, the balcony. It collapsed. I mean, it's crazy. Well, when we left, you know, Ricky and Robert, you know, they were waiting on us outside. Okay, and I grabbed my stuff. I started walking with Corporal Robinson and Too Tough Tony, and we got through the door. Corporal Robinson, Too Tough Tony was going to meet Ricky and Robert over there, and you know, somebody had said something to me. I think it was like Don Montoya, a guy that was from up there or had traveled up there to do this battle royal or whatever. I turned around, I had my bag in my hand, and I asked him, "Did you say something, Don?" No. Well, when I turned back around, a waste management truck smashed me with a dumpster. They had a dumpster way up high over the door, and he come down and smashed me. I was underneath it.
Wow.
I was underneath the damn thing. Well, there wasn't nothing I could do. I mean, I was underneath. I couldn't move. My bag was sitting here. I couldn't move. Corporal Robinson and Too Tough Tony was hollering. I see the little skinny waste management driver running up here, and they were hollering at him. And I hear Robert Gibson in the back, "Cash, what you doing?" You know, and come on, man, it's time to go out here. What you doing? Get out from under there. You know, of course, I could have been a millionaire then, but I didn't. I mean, I was so hot. I wanted to kill this little waste management guy. But he raised the dumpster up, and of course, I didn't do nothing. I was ready to go do what we were getting ready to go do, you know. But you know, people ask me to tell them that story all the time, and man, that's a shoot story. You know, I ended up underneath the bottom of a waste management dumpster. So it's
serious.
I mean, I look back and laugh. You know,
Yeah.
I could have been severely injured. You know, that really could have been tough on me, but it wasn't. It's just something that wrestling makes that you look back on and want to laugh. So.
Yeah. Is there any guys in the business you have heat with, or don't have no respect for?
Any guys in the business that I have heat with that I just don't have any respect for? You know what? I've never really given it much thought, to be honest with you. I'm sure there are guys out there that are going to frown on me for doing what I'm doing to make the best of my wrestling experience. You know, and in my opinion, and this is my honest to God opinion, I really don't give a damn. They can talk, they can yap, they can do whatever they want, but at the end of the day, I'm going home to my wife and my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful wife and my beautiful, beautiful kids, and I'm going to smile and I'm going to say I'm having a ball, and that's going to be the end of it.
That's what's important, man.
So that's it, you know.
Yeah. What has changed the most in the Indies now from when you started?
A lot more. I mean, you know, it used to be you had to, you know, you had a home fed that you stuck with, all right, and that home fed would get you bookings, not necessarily in state. You know, you would go here, you would go there, you would go there. You know, these days, in every state, most every state that's prevalent in wrestling, you know, you got 10, 12 feds, you know, and the young guys breaking in think that getting work and working is all there is. They don't understand that they need to get out. You know, it's all about exposure. You're not going to get exposure working 10 feds within 60 miles.
Right.
Okay.
True. Yeah.
I think that is part of the biggest. Not to mention the internet.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, the internet was around then, but it wasn't as prevalent then.
Yeah.
As it is now. You know, back then they still had hotlines, wrestling hotlines. You could call a hotline and find out when the next, you know, the big fed around town was going to be, you know, running their shows, find out who's on it and all that good stuff. So, you know, the internet played a big part of wrestling, you know, today as opposed to yesteryear, or my yesteryear, you know, which is, like I said, mid-90s or whatever.
What's your thoughts on hardcore wrestling, death matches, etc.? You think it's good for wrestling?
Wrestling? Yeah. I broke in doing hardcore wrestling. You know, I was a tough guy at heart. I wanted to prove how tough I was. Okay? I believe that niche in wrestling, is probably part of why professional wrestling is where it's at. Now, some people say wrestling's in a bad state these days. Some people say it's in a good state. I happen to think that wrestling is in a good state. I don't attribute that specifically to hardcore wrestling. But there are all kinds of different niches, and I think hardcore wrestling is just a natural evolution of professional wrestling, and that niche is going to sell tickets regardless here on out. There are always going to be vampires. There's always going to be somebody who wants to see blood. There's always going to be somebody who wants to see barbed wire bats and thumbtacks. It's just it's a niche in wrestling that is not going to go away, and I think it's the natural evolution. I mean, it is.
Is there one city or town you'd like to work more than any, and why?
Of course, here. I love working here, but I truly, truly love my trips to Detroit, Michigan, and a man named Alan Hogbuck. You know, A.T. Huck was always really good to me. I loved going to Milwaukee and working for, you know, the Carmine Despiritos back then. You know, I guess Kurt Kruger does, you know, Dysfunction does real good up there these days. You know, I never spent a lot of time, you know, other than that little year. You know, the most informative time in professional wrestling of my life was in 2007 when I moved to Seattle and got the privilege of working around Buddy Wayne and seeing how wrestling outside of this particular area worked. You know, in Washington State, the athletic commission there, to be a professional wrestler, you pay $300 or something, you know, to get licensed to wrestle in the state, and you had to pay like $5,000 to get a promoter's bond or something in the state of Washington. But you know, they work around that by working on the Native American reservations and all that good stuff. But that was a very informative time, and I really enjoyed out there. And you know, I got to meet a lot of guys out there. You know, I got to meet the Colonel De Beers and guys like that spend a lot of their time out there or up north, Gagne and those areas. You know, that was a regular rotation back in the territory days. You know, the Rezes up there in Washington, or before you go to Canada and then back down to Portland, Oregon, and that kind of thing. So, you know, seeing all that, you know, it really opened my eyes as to how the business was and, you know, where it's went to. So, you know, that would have been a fun time. And if I ever get the chance to do it again, because I have some family out there, I'm going to do it. Because that was a fun place to go.
Now, I've seen you work, and I know you got the chops down, right? Who has the hardest chops that you've received?
Heavy-handed people. You know what? For a little feller, these days, Isaiah is really heavy-handed.
Yeah.
You know, for a little guy. You know, I call him my fan because he is. You know, he come up to the business. I would consider him. You know, the dude truly is a brother to me. A bigger fella is heavy-handed. A guy named Victor Bruiser. You know, that dude is really. You know, he's really heavy-handed. you know, I've traded chops with a lot of guys. You know, a lot of guys that done the Native American gimmick and all that stuff. You know, it's part of it. You know, I don't really discern why I'm out there. You know, I can do my thing. If a man chops me and it sounds good, I'm gonna sell the shit out of it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but if he chops me hard and it don't sound good, why would you sell it if you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of them things. You know, Isaiah, he's heavy handed for a little fella, and Victor Bruiser, for a big dude, he's heavy handed. You know.
What's your thoughts on WWE and TNA currently? Do you watch it or?
Uh, I watch certain things. You know, it's always fun to turn it on and say, you know, yeah, I've been in a locker room with those guys, or you know, that's always fun. You know, I do still watch certain parts. I try to, you know, the stories are the stories. You know, they're for the fans on the other side of the fence. You know, I try not to delve too much in it. If I'm around a bunch of fans, you know, I won't, because a lot of times people that know you get around them watching, you know, pay per views or watching wrestling, and they tend to want to ask you stuff. My current view of the state of World Wrestling Entertainment, well, I mean, the World Wrestling Entertainment pretty much says it all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, the fact that they call guys superstars as opposed to wrestlers, you know, should tell you something. You know, TNA to me is something that you know should have never happened. You know, the why and wherefore I'll never know, but you know that to me that is just an NWA World Championship Wrestling all over again. You know, or it had become that. You know, originally it wasn't that. You know, originally it was done right. It was nurtured and it was tried to be brought along right, but you know, something happens along the way. I mean, wrestling is a very, very funny business, and you know, one thing's for certain in wrestling, nothing's for certain.
What would you say has been your biggest accomplishment so far in your career?
I'm still walking.
Mm.
I'm still happy. I still enjoy this business and love this business and love the people that I have surrounded myself with in this business. And to top everything off, uh, I have kept my family close, my wife close. I've had my wife the whole time I've been in this business. There are a lot of people that cannot say that. Okay? A lot of people. A lot of people lose everything because of professional wrestling. But I am proud of the fact that I have not, and I am still happy doing it.
What does cash flow bring to the business that most wrestlers don't?
What does cash bring to the business that most wrestlers don't? An aura, an aura of legitimacy. I'm 6'4". I'm 310 pounds. I will put you in a headlock. I will take you down. I will pound on you. You know, from a worker standpoint, I won't kill you. I know how not to kill you, but at the same time, you'll know that I was there. Um, and I've had the privilege of seeing a lot, a lot of different sides of professional wrestling. You know, from a drug-induced state to a sober state to a positive person to an uber negative person. Okay, I like to think that I'm rather intelligent and am able to put stuff together in a way that I can convey certain messages to people. And I'm an athlete. You know, there are things that I can do that nobody else can do. Nobody else has ever been able to do some of the things that I've done. You know, athletically. You know, politically, business wise. You know, on my end, I'll admit, leaves a lot to be desired. You can ask anybody that used to run with me. I've never been one for the politics side of wrestling. You know, I, I I wanted the camaraderie and I wanted the athleticism. You know, I was the guy that liked to hoop in leagues after getting out of high school. I was a guy that wanted to go play for the Louisville Bulls because I wanted to kill somebody. I wanted to run over somebody. Okay, you know, I I'm alive and healthy. That's what I contribute.
What's your favorite pro wrestling moment as a fan?
My favorite pro wrestling moment as a fan. Now you got to be a little more specific than that, Josh. I mean, are you talking my pre my pre wrestling days, in
Yeah.
my fan days, my pre wrestling days, dude? Starcade '85 War Games, man. Seeing Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff and the Road Warriors come through in that double cage match, dude, just set me off. I mean, just set me off. Seeing Hawk press slam dude up into the roof of the cage. Ah, man, that I want to be that. I got the privilege of meeting Hawk, by the way. He's a good fella, kind of funny. Yeah, that really set me off. Anything, man, back in the mid '80s or whatever. I mean, I was tuned into NWA Saturday Night all the time back then. You know, anything Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard and Ole and R, anything those guys did, man, I reached out and grabbed it. You know, I mean, that was my thing.
What do you enjoy most about the wrestling business?
I enjoy the athleticism. You know, a big misconception about wrestling nowadays is that it's not a competition. That is absolutely false. You compete every time you walk through the curtain. When you wake up and you're in the wrestling business, you're competing. Okay? You're competing. You know, how good are you going to look today? How hard are you going to hit it in the gym? You know, how many miles are you going to run on the treadmill? How much weight you going to push? Okay? How long are you going to stay in a tanning bed? All right? How well are you going to eat? You know, wrestling is a competition. May not be in the traditional sense, but it's a competition, and that's what I love.
How do you want to be remembered when you retire?
I want to be remembered as somebody that stayed happy in professional wrestling. I don't know how else to put it. You know, I have made up my mind. Nobody has ever taught me this, but professional wrestling is exactly what you make it. I have the happiest memories in my childhood were involving professional wrestling in some form or fashion. You know, with my grandfather that helped me along in this business, or what I was doing outside. You know, playing with the kids in the neighborhood or whatever. Uh, I was happy, and when I retire, people are gonna know that I spent my time in professional wrestling. I was happy, and I enjoyed what I did. Every stinking bit of it.
Cash, man, I appreciate you coming on doing this interview. You got any last words or anything you want to say to your fans before we go?
Nope. I will say there's a lot more to come. You know, don't let those questions about retiring stick too much because I have a long, long way to go, and you're going to be hearing a lot more from me.
Thanks again, man.
Appreciate it, Josh.